So our next session takes us into the matter of sovereignty for industry, for technology, and in the considerations that we all must make in our daily personal and professional lives. We have the Cisco Research Chair of Digital Health, Professor Trish Williams, is internationally recognised for her work in health informatics and cybersecurity. Well, just do that one, shall I? Trish has authored over 140 publications and co-leads global standards bodies including HL7 and ISO. With 30 years of experience in healthcare computing, a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Technology and Engineering, and one of the 2021 Brilliant Women in Digital Health, she is pretty well placed to open a discussion for us on critical technologies. In a moment, I'm going to bring in a pre-record from Trish. Trish is unfortunately not able to be with us here in the room. She is quite literally in the skies, I believe, and so we wish her safe travels, of course. Following Trish, I will invite Professor Frank den Hartog to the stand, but I'll just introduce him to you now. So Cisco Research Chair in Critical Infrastructure, Professor Frank den Hartog specialises in cybersecurity for complex wireless systems and industrial IoT. He was Senior Scientist at TNO, which is the Netherlands Organisation for Applied Scientific Research, and has led major EU research projects, contributed to over 80 peer-reviewed publications and 23 patents. Frank is a global expert in secure network architecture and smart infrastructures, and perfect to lead us through the key issues. I mentioned earlier that Innovation Central Adelaide is part of the National Industry Innovation Network, and Frank is also part of that, working with Innovation Central Canberra out of the University of Canberra. So that's just part of how this National Industry Innovation Network helps us to extend beyond what we can do right here. So I will cross your fingers for the tech gods. Should be pretty all right in this room today, shouldn't we? But let's begin hearing from a pre-record from Professor Trish Williams.
Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be part of this virtual symposium for me, and I'm sorry that I cannot be there to join you in person, as I'll be somewhere over the Pacific Ocean when you meet. However, I can assure you that you're in the safe hands of my colleagues, who are not only experts in their fields, but who care deeply about shaping Australia's technological future with intelligence, integrity, and just the right amount of caffeine. If you've ever wondered what keeps people like us at night, apart from global time zones and cats walking across the keyboard in my case, it's this. How do we protect and advance the technologies that underpin our national capability while keeping them secure, ethical and sovereign? Well, that question has never been more urgent than it is today. We live in a world where technology moves faster than regulation, where algorithms can now write code and occasionally policy papers, and where the dishwasher talks to my phone, they're still not to my children even when I ask them to empty it. In this fluid and hyper-connected landscape, sovereignty over critical technologies and critical infrastructure has become a strategic imperative. This is not a far-off future, it's happening right now. The systems we design, the data we protect, and the partnerships that we build will determine whether Australia remains secure, resilient and future-ready. Today in this symposium, our focus is on critical technologies, those that drive innovation, capability and competitiveness. My colleague, Professor Frank den Hartog, will explore critical infrastructure as well. And this is the systems that keep the lights on, the data flowing and the nation functioning. It might be helpful to think of it like this. Critical technologies are the engines of progress. AI, quantum computing, advanced communications, biotechnology and robotics. The things that let us dream big and move fast. Critical infrastructure is the road that keeps us connected and stable. Without one, the other doesn't go very far. And unlike my home Wi-Fi, this relationship can't afford to drop out. Australia's blueprint for critical technologies sets up a clear path forward. It identifies technologies that significantly enhance and/or pose risks to our national interest. And it highlights 4 key goals: secure access, trusted partnerships, sovereign protection of IP, and importantly, regional resilience. Here in South Australia, that national ambition has local traction. The critical technology statement and the list of critical technologies in national interest, together with South Australia's Innovation Places leadership framework, focus on autonomy, secure supply chains and sovereign control, especially across the important areas of defence, health, space and clean energy. These are not just economic strategies, they're survival strategies. Because sovereignty today is not defined by borders anymore. It's defined by bandwidth, algorithm, and who controls the update schedule. And we're already seeing what sovereignty looks like in practice. Here at Flinders University Factory of the Future at Tonsley, we're testing technologies for advanced manufacturing, creating prototypes that actually work outside the lab. And through the Medical Device Partnering Programme, we're translating brilliant ideas into medtech solutions. And of course, in the Cisco Flinders Digital Health Design Lab, the Digital Health Research Centre, and together with Innovation Central Adelaide, we're working on cybersecurity, networking and data science, and building the capability that keeps our digital health systems secure and trusted. If we add to that the Flinders Diploma of Digital Technologies, developed in conjunction with industry, we are upskilling a workforce that understands not just how technology works, but why it matters. These are the next generation of problem solvers who can secure a network, run a simulation, and still explain it to their parents. But let's be honest, technology itself is not the goal. It's the means to better healthcare, to stronger defence, to cleaner energy, and to more connected communities. As we venture into quantum computing, autonomous systems and synthetic biology, we have to ask ourselves important questions. What sort of future are we building? Who benefits from this future? And how can we make sure that our values go along with this technology and don't get left behind in the cloud? Capability is not just about infrastructure or investment. It's about designing systems that reflect our values, our people, and our vision as a nation. And that's what sovereignty is about. It's not just technical, it's human. It's about aligning policy, technology, and people to create systems that are secure, trusted, and inclusive. It is about capability, yes, but it's also about collaboration and care. Because no matter how advanced our machines become, they still need people who think critically, who act ethically, and let's face it, can occasionally turn them off and on again. So, as you begin this symposium, I'll leave you with this thought. Sovereignty is not about control, it's about choice. And choice depends on the capability we build, the collaborations we foster, and the care that we invest in both. So I wish you well this morning, and may your networks always be stable, your algorithms explainable, and your coffee very strong. Have a lovely day.
Oh, you're welcome to virtual chat.
I think I should be on. I'm going to step a little bit this way and invite Frank to come up, and we're going to do a quick little plug and play swap over of a laptop, and I'm not sure if Richard needs to, I'm not sure if we need any backup. While I do that, I'm going to step out this way. So one of the things that we wanted to do today was to bring together a broad spectrum of people, and we've achieved that, which is really, really wonderful. So thank you again for all being here with us. We have people in the room who represent both state and federal governments from a policy perspective. We have people in the room who represent industry, who represent the health services, who represent the tech industry, and who represent research as well. Look at that, it's seamless. I didn't need to pad very much at all. I'm going to step this way. Frank, the floor is yours.
I'm going to try to speak without microphone. In the few hours that are left in the week, I try to be a singer, so this should work. Can everybody understand from the back row?
Frank, we're recording.
Because that gives me also...
We're recording.
In that case, I'm going to wave around my two hands, and for the recording, that's going to be terrible. I do my best, and I'll walk around too. So, okay, cool. So my talk this morning is expand a little bit on what Trish was just saying about critical infrastructure, critical technologies, and sovereignty. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say. Critical infrastructure, critical technologies, is that the same? Not quite. Then I'll go into sovereignty versus partnerships. No, that's okay. Hold on.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. And I conclude with answering the question that I was requested to answer. How do we align policy, technology, and human factors to build systems that are resilient now and in the future? Okay. So critical infrastructure versus critical technologies. So I'm Cisco Research Chair in critical infrastructure. And so I follow the definition of what is critical infrastructure as given by the Department of Home Affairs, by the Cyber and Critical Infrastructure Security Center. So they say those physical facilities, supply chains, information technologies, and communication networks, which if destroyed, degraded, or rendered unavailable, and the highlighting is mine, by the way. I'll come back to that in a moment. For an extended period, would significantly impact the social or economic well-being of the nation, or affect Australia's ability to conduct national defence and ensure national security. Okay, so that's roughly speaking everything that where the availability is threatened, that would give us an enormous impact. That's critical infrastructure. Let's compare that to the definition of critical technology. It's not the same thing. So that's given by Department of Industry, Science and Resources. And here, critical technology is technologies that can impact Australia's national interest, including our economic prosperity, national security, and social cohesion. So now you see why I highlighted those words in the critical infrastructure definition. There is actually a relationship there. But let's unpack that a little bit further. So, critical infrastructure is defined, if you like, by or given by the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act that we have since 2018. At some stage, the Australian government realized that apparently we need to regulate our critical infrastructure in terms of security because of a whole bunch of incidents that happened. And 11 business sectors of the 20-odd business sectors that we have been chosen as critical infrastructure sectors. Now, not every infrastructure in those sectors is critical infrastructure. So within those sectors, we define critical infrastructure assets, and they're not really defined. The best definition you have in that Critical Infrastructure Act is basically the minister defines what it is. Okay, which is interesting. So we have now a list of critical infrastructure assets, and that list is just growing and growing and growing. And the danger I see at some stage is that everything is going to be critical infrastructure, and if everything is critical infrastructure, then nothing is. Okay, that danger has been understood. So now we have something which is critical infrastructure that is extra critical. We call that systems of national significance. So there is the reality here, the realization that apparently criticality of infrastructure is at least not something that is a black-white thing. It's not, it is critical or not. There is apparently something like a scale of criticality. How that scale is defined, KPIs, how to measure that, not really known. We can say something, availability is something we can measure, we can determine, that's nines, like 99.999% availability. And impact is also something we can measure, we can always put a dollar sign on it. Which also makes us realize that then nothing will be 100% critical. Because impact will always be measurable and availability will never be 100%. Okay, so that's something we need to realize. And we see that, in the discussions with critical infrastructure, we're sort of moving into the direction of making criticality measurable and realizing that nothing is 100% critical. Now, hold that thought. Let's now move to critical technologies. So we have defined here in Australia, we defined 7 technologies, fields, that we call critical. So these are the ones: AI, advanced information and communication technologies, quantum, advanced manufacturers and materials, autonomous systems, robots, clean energy and storage, and biotechnologies. Okay. Now let's think about choices. So apparently we have made choices about what we as Australia think should be our critical technologies. Now let's just look at the very first one, AI. Probably everybody in this room realizes that we will never catch up with, say, the US if we want to do everything AI. We have to make choices. We're also a much smaller country. We have to be clever in this. What AI are we going to do? What AI are we not going to do? Good news is we have made a few choices there. So when you look in policies here, then you see that we choose for AI for better health, aged care and disability service, AI for better towns, cities and infrastructure, AI for better natural resource management. Again, the highlighting is mine. Why did I do that? Again, to make the relationship with critical infrastructure, of course. So you see this relationship between critical technologies and critical infrastructure is starting to happen. But it's not the same. When we look at the second one, just as an example, advanced information and communication technologies, this is the only thing that I really could find. You know, Australia is well placed to take advantage of new ICT developments such as 6G. The reality is that as a position here in Australia in terms of advanced ICT, it's not that good. I think we are better in AI. We're definitely also better in quantum. In ICT, I think we really have to catch up if we want to gain any level of sovereignty in there. And when you look at the choice that we have made here, is apparently not to be sovereign, but to take advantage of technology by others. Okay? So here you see some choices already being made and stuff where we want to be good at and have some level of sovereignty, and other stuff where we realize it's critical technology, but by no means will we gain any level of sovereignty in the short future. Okay, now let's take this further. So what I'm saying, and that's message number one of today, so some critical technologies, just like some critical infrastructure is more critical than others, we will also see that some critical technologies is more critical than others. And if we want to, so we need a measure to determine which critical technology is more critical than others. And that will also inform us in terms of how much we have to invest in sovereignty of that critical technology. And I claim that the understanding of critical infrastructure and the role of critical technologies in there is going to help. So I plea for a discussion about which of those critical infrastructure are going to be critical for actually having our critical. No, try again. I'm playing for a discussion of which of those critical technologies are going to be critical to keep our critical infrastructure going. I made a sort of a guess here, but that's just a hypothesis from my side. This needs a proper discussion. That's message number one. So I've used the word sovereignty already a couple of times, and that leads to my message number two for today, sovereignty versus partnership. So I already said that nothing is 100% critical, okay? Now, I come from cybersecurity, and in cybersecurity, it's now well established that nothing is ever 100% cyber secure. Now, if something is not 100% cyber secure, it becomes a business decision. Because then you have to decide about how secure do you want something to be and how much money are you happy to throw into it. And that's, of course, related to the impact of any breach that's happening. Now, the good news is that in cybersecurity, we have developed models, decision mechanisms to make decisions about how to secure something. That's called threat modeling. Steps: no one understands your assets, understand the threats for your assets, make deliberate choices in how to mitigate those threats and protect and recover your assets, keep up with the developments in cybersecurity, use methodological approaches to all of the above, and regularly repeat all of the above, keep this up, and don't hesitate to get experts. So this is known stuff in cyber. Now, what I'm claiming is that for making decisions on criticality of your infrastructure and technologies, we need to develop similar methods and also quantify it. The second message on this one is that, so we already decided that nothing is 100% critical, nothing is 100% secure, and I also say that nothing is ever 100% sovereign. So even sovereignty then becomes a business decision for which we need methods like this. Even growing a park like that, if you're really going to look into the details about how the supply chains look like, you won't get it 100% sovereign. It's an hypothesis that I have, because if anything, it's just because of climate change, which will determine how well you can grow a park there, and climate change is global. In the end, everything is connected on this planet, and particularly when it comes to complicated technologies like the critical technologies, it's going to be very hard to get away from international collaboration. So partnerships will be needed because nothing can be 100% sovereign, which is, again, where something like the National Industry Innovation Network comes in. Collaboration between 10 universities in the country, led by Cisco. And then you can say, of course, yeah, but this is sovereign capability because it's a National Industry Innovation Network, but Cisco is an international company. And not only that, a few months ago, we added Singapore to the mix too. Okay, but I believe that these type of international collaborations with trusted partners can help protecting our critical infrastructure, making decisions in our critical technologies, and getting everything on a level of sovereignty that we choose. Another interesting example there is an announcement that Cisco made a month ago, which is they say, okay, we have developed something, a package, which we call sovereign critical infrastructure technology for our customers in Europe. So and they define it as a configurable air-gapped portfolio. Just really interesting. First of all, I repeat my claim that Australia should become a member of EU as soon as possible. We're already in the Eurovision Song Festival. That's usually step number one. So the second thing is it's really interesting because why Cisco does it is because Europe is well ahead in terms of regulation of things like critical infrastructure, sovereignty, etc. And Cisco here is a trusted partner of Europe to develop this type of technology together. Also, thing is, I mean, yes, this is technology in air-gapped, but it's still full of, say, chipsets, and the supply chain in chipset is still very, very international. So 100% sovereignty doesn't exist. Partnerships are being needed. Trusted partners are being needed. So finalizing, how do I summarize this? How do we align policy, technology, and human factors to build systems that are resilient now and in the future? So I think that requires an advanced art of decision making, and the realization that nothing is ever 100% secure, not 100% critical, not 100% resilient, and not 100% sovereign. So that requires also much more research into quantifying criticality and sovereignty. We have to follow the example of cybersecurity here. It also requires depoliticization, where we make every discussion political, like the minister can decide on what is sovereign or what is critical. We end up with everything being critical and everything being sovereign. It needs advanced communication and transparency, because you have to explain your tough decisions to the people, and that then requires efficient leadership, and finally partnerships. And with that, I'm going to end my introduction. I hope I have set up the next speakers for success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Frank. Now, oh my goodness, if you don't have questions after that one, I'm busy putting mine in as well. I will stay out the front here while that is put together well. So we do have people from representing all sorts of aspects and areas in the room today. I encourage you, if you're on a table with people that you don't know and I hope that you are, because that was the intention, then please make sure to introduce yourselves. We will have a break after this next speaker, so we'll have one more speaker and then a morning tea break. So please make sure to introduce yourselves to the other people on your table and ask them some questions and cross-pollinate a little bit and see what interests are driving you most and what interests are driving them most. You might find some interesting differences in perspectives and you might find some interesting similarities. Thank you, Richard. So we'll take... I'll just change microphones. We'll take a little break and have a quick look at some of those questions. You can see this in your Slido, from wherever you are. You can sort of see the sorts of things that we're looking at. How can we ensure AI and technology will be used for enhancing the strengths of humanity? Well, that's a really good question. And interestingly enough, our next speaker is going to address just that, or the human factors. So remember that you can vote up or vote down, and if that particular question really hits a point for you, then please vote it up, because it will help us to consolidate the questions at the end. What else have we got? Do technology grads want to stay in Australia? That's a good one. Do they want to stay in Adelaide? I hope so. We've lived in Adelaide for a long time with this brain drain, so I'm not quite sure how we're going with the brain drain at the moment. So keep engaging in Slido. Please also make some comments in there as well. You don't need to use it just for Q&A, just for questions, but please make your comments in there as well. We'll move on now to the first of 3 sessions, and these sessions do a bit of a deep dive into the technology aspects, although I think we're already swimming quite well. A bit of freestyle going on. So let's start with human. And do that deep dive into technology and human factors. And that we'll do that on the premise that if we ignore human factors like skills, motivation and context, we risk building systems that alienate rather than empower. Dr. Sarah Howard will be taking us through some critical perspectives on critical technologies from a human factors perspective. She is an organisational psychologist with over 15 years of applied research experience across defence, health, manufacturing and education. She is a senior research fellow in human factors at Flinders University's College of Business, Government and Law, and is focus area lead for SME performance optimisation in the Flinders Factory of the Future. We might need Richard. We may or may not. We certainly need Sarah. So I'll invite Sarah up now and we'll do a quick plug and play. One last look at her on the screen and then you can see her in person. Someone needs to invent a switch, don't they? Just a switch between the two laptops. That should be up there for you now in just a minute.
My laptop's old, so it is a bit of a lag.
If any problems, Richard, it's in your hands. There we go.
Awesome.
Please welcome Sarah.
Thanks, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Spoiler alert, I'm advocating for less tech, more human, but we'll see how that unfolds. And I think, Frank, yes, you have set me up for success, and I can already see some common threads in the speakers this morning, which is fantastic that there is already alignment there. I'm very enthusiastic about being here. It's really wonderful to see that the role of the human in technology has been elevated in this way. So thank you to Innovation Central Adelaide and Cisco for the opportunity to be here, and also for reinforcing the importance of human factors. So human factors is the point of difference for Flinders Factory of the Future. If you haven't been down to Tonsley to check it out, please come down and experience for yourself. So we have social scientists working closely with engineers to ensure that industry is adopting technology appropriately and in a well-considered and effective way. So I believe the factory is due to formally be launched in the end of January next year, but by all means, please come down and check it out. So in this session this morning, I'm going to explore how we can influence this question. Technology, what is it good for? So we want to maximise the value that it brings to individuals, organisations and society. So as we've heard already, critical technologies promise quite a lot. Economic prosperity, national security, social cohesion. So growing the economy, creating well-paid jobs and improving quality of lives. But it's really important that we don't rely on this and assume that this is the default and a given, because there are many factors that will determine whether or not we can achieve this. So I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, would be familiar with the model of diffusion of innovation. So I thought this would be a good place to start in terms of answering this question, what is technology good for? So we know that the role and value of technology can look different for different people depending on their perspectives, different personalities and different experiences. So this model captures or represents how the population collectively responds to innovation or technology. So looking at this question, we might find that if we ask the laggards, what is technology good for? They might respond, not really good for much at all. So laggards are suspicious of innovation, they don't like change, and they see technology as a real hindrance. So pretty much they'll only use it if they have to, if it's a last resort. If we move on to the late majority, they might respond saying, yep, technology is good for a few things. Oops.
Sarah, the clicker should work for you as well.
Oh, okay.
It's attached to the podium, not your computer.
This one? Okay, let's test it out. Cooking with gas, thank you, Catherine. So yes, for the late majority, technology may be good for a few things. They're cautious, technologically shy, and they want bulletproof solutions. For the early majority, yep, a few more things. Many things technology can be good for. They are prudent, like steady progress and proven technology solutions. For the early adopters, they're likely to agree that technology is good for most things. They are adventurous role models who like to test out innovations. And finally, for the innovators, wow, technology is just the bee's knees and is good for anything and everything. They're enthusiastic about all things technology and change. And I think Edward certainly encapsulated that this morning. So how can we optimise individual organisational and societal use of technologies and their longer-term adoption? In other words, how can we support laggards to be more open-minded? How can we encourage more curiosity in our late and early majority? And how do we ensure that early adopters and innovators retain their enthusiasm? We've already heard it a couple of times this morning. The answer is trust. We need to foster trust. Trust reduces our risk perception, increases our confidence and loyalty. So there are three main domains that we can seek trust or demonstrate trust, or three buckets of trust I like to refer to. So this can occur at the technology level, at an organisational level, both in terms of the tech providers and the organisations who implement the tech, and also at that broader ecosystem level. So we'll explore each of these now. So what does it mean to develop trust at a technology level? So obviously technology includes both hardware and software. So we need reliability. We want the technology to perform consistently. Each time we use it, we want to know that it will do what we want it to do. Usability. Usability is key. Is it intuitive, easy to use and useful? Usability guarantees us an effective, efficient and positive experience. We're really wanting to avoid those frustrating moments. And what is important in all of this is the role that design plays. So design determines usability. So performance and design are inextricably linked. They have a symbiotic reciprocal relationship. In fact, design factors can account or explain for upwards of 50% of variation in overall performance. So we really can't ignore it. And what was interesting in June this year, the World Economic Forum produced this article suggesting that the limiting factor of digital transformation growth in manufacturing was not in fact skill shortages, but rather poorly designed digital manufacturing tools. And they concluded by emphasising that manufacturers must prioritise usability of new tech, and technology vendors must design for operators, not just engineers. So where does this leave us? What does good design look like? We start by adopting universal design principles. So universal design is often synonymous with inclusive design, adaptive design, or lifespan design. Universal design refers to the creation of products and environments that are aesthetic and usable by the greatest extent possible, so by everyone regardless of their abilities or disabilities, age, experience, or status. So these 7 principles serve as a guideline for designers and users. So it's important to recognise that we're not suggesting that you're going to be able to nail all of these components every single time. It's acknowledging that no one design will ever suit all people, but it's about getting it right for most people in a given context and aiming for continuous improvement. We're wanting to try to set people up for success and minimise unintended consequences. So despite awareness of these design principles, humans are prone to making assumptions and groupthink. So we can support application of universal design principles through user-centred design. And this should be executed by diverse stakeholders and multidisciplinary teams. So user-centred design is a tangible way to achieve universal design. The aim of user-centred design or person-centred design, it's a process to capture the whole user experience from the very beginning right through the lifespan of the product or the technology. The process just supports understanding expectations and developing empathy and ethical design. User-centred design is a powerful way of finding out what works and what doesn't work and why. Usability problems are the easiest and least costly to fix in the design phase, so it makes good people and business sense to engage in user-centred design processes. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. So user-centred design has 4 main stages, which we'll look at in a little bit more detail now. So research, which is a space that I enjoy. Research is all about consultation and collecting information from end users. So we often do this through interviews, observation and surveys and the like. It's really important to flag that end users can be quite limiting and that we need to think broadly when we speak about end users. So it's not just the person who might be using the tech. It could be, there's lots of interdependencies with jobs these days. It could involve their supervisors, other organisations, policymakers and so on. But we'll have a little look in a bit more detail soon about that network of users. The next stage is understanding the requirements or translating that data that we've collected into what the parameters are. Narrowing down what are the pain points that we are trying to address, what are the problems that we're trying to solve. And obviously the broader or the more numerous end users that you consult, the likelihood is that you're going to have to prioritise or negotiate in terms of what those requirements are. From there, we get to the design phase. So obviously this is where we prototype, we establish a proof of concept based on what we know and the group of users that we think will be involved. What's an early model of what this could look like? And then importantly, we must evaluate whether or not we've nailed the design. So again, we have to loop back in with our end users who are representative. We don't often, evaluation falls down because we don't have a diverse end user group. We just tap our mates on the shoulder and say, hey, give this a thumbs up, thumbs down, but we need to be a bit more comprehensive in how we do that evaluation of our design piece. So it's not surprising then that user interface and user experience designers are among the top 10 jobs with the most expected job growth in the next 5 years, according to the World Economic Forum Jobs Report. And this is also supported by Cisco's AI Workforce Consortium report this year, also suggesting that skills relevant to user-centred design are also in demand. So now we'll move from technology, kind of a layer up, into that organisational perspective. So how do we establish trust in tech providers and organisations who implement them? Well, first of all, we want the organisations to be competent, to have the skills and capabilities to deliver both technical and non-technical components. It's also important that the organisations have a really solid foundation of values, including integrity. So we'll look at organisational culture in a bit more detail shortly. So if we look at competence, the skills and capability in relation to data analytics, for example, advancements in sensors, artificial intelligence and computing power mean those with technical programming skills, such as machine learning engineers and data scientists, can provide organisations with quick and predictive automated decision-making. However, there are some who challenge the notion that AI-driven automated decision-making can provide meaningful automated insight, given that AI requires a series of predetermined inputs and threshold parameters and isn't built for exception handling because the very nature of the exception is hard to anticipate and predetermine. AI may provide error reduction or reduce uncertainties in pattern detection, but the subsequent execution of actions or decisions based on those thresholds needs a person in the loop to verify this automated decision in order to be able to generate genuine insight, and they need to use sense-making skills. Automated decisions may be more accepted in certain situations, so that context is very much important. For example, in fraud detection in online banking, this is seen as quite a good thing. It has a protective effect or perceived protective layer, although it can be catastrophic in other situations, such as debt collection, where it can be very much punitive. For example, and yes, I had to go there, the unlawful robo-debt scheme was caused by the Australian government implementing an automated debt collection system that compared average income data from the Australian Taxation Office with fortnightly income data reported to Centrelink. When the system found a discrepancy, it automatically issued a debt notice, putting the onus on recipients to prove the debt was incorrect. Human sense-making and oversight could have prevented the robo-debt scheme by addressing its fundamental flaws, which was lack of human judgment in the automated debt collection, inadequate consultation with external stakeholders, and a failure to consider the real-world impact on individuals. Instead of blindly trusting the algorithm, human decision-makers could have implemented checks and balances like AI ethics assessments, stronger legal frameworks and better testing to identify and correct the inaccurate income averaging that harmed thousands of people. So linking this to skills, adding more human sense-making into such methods and processes can prevent serious consequences for both individuals and businesses, although we acknowledge that we can't eliminate all challenges and problems altogether. Sense-making is a key leadership skill and requires critical thinking and curiosity. So our ability to evaluate information, identify and challenge assumptions, and ask the right questions, considering other people's viewpoints and then forming judgments based on these. We also need adaptability, flexibility to change our understanding as new information comes to pass and to navigate uncertainty and ambiguity. So employers view these skills as currently in demand and only growing over the next 5 years, again based on World Economic Forum data. So the robo-debt example highlights the importance of applying systems thinking to technology adoption and innovation. And funnily enough, systems thinking is also considered a skill in current and increasing demand into the future. So it wouldn't be a presentation on human factors without talking about systems thinking. It lies at the heart of the human factors discipline. So this hexagon model, a socio-technical framework, recognises that change or innovation in one area has a ripple effect on the others, often impacting and requiring change in each of those other components. For example, if our needs or goals change, or at the organisation, if their needs or goals change in response to internal or external opportunities or pressures, this will often lead to the introduction of technology. Could be a software, most likely these days, as opposed to hardware. This in turn requires different people capabilities, which may change workflows and procedures, which in some cases may even require a change in the layout of a facility. Not forgetting that often it requires establishment of new norms and behavioural practices, and obviously the culture of the organisation. So the whole system needs to be monitored and evaluated regularly to ensure the net benefit is still there when we implement technology and any change. Change or innovation often fails because too much focus is put on any one single part of the system, and most commonly that's technology. So let's turn to culture in organisations. So competence alone will not increase trust in technology vendors or organisations implementing them. Demonstration of key values and walking the talk is needed. Trust is earned and cannot be automated, and it can be lost instantly. So leaders in technology development and all organisations in this digital age earn trust when they show openness, responsiveness, and a commitment to doing things better and then following through on that. A few years ago, the World Economic Forum proposed the following key characteristics of trustworthy organisations. So among these are safety, so a focus on preventing harm, whether that be physical, emotional and psychological, from the technology that's being used. Providing privacy, so users have an expectation that they will have control over the data or the confidentiality of their personal information that has been shared. And also transparency. So it's important that there's honest, clear, visible understanding of how the data is being used. So we'll have a look at an example where these attributes are tested or come together. So let's look at AI facial recognition and detection. So like the automated decision-making example earlier, context is everything. AI facial recognition and detection technology has clear benefits. So it can be used to find missing people or people at risk, such as those suffering from dementia or having a mental health episode. It's also very handy in high-risk environments where you want to pick up people who shouldn't be there, like hospitals, schools, and in the defence setting. However, what is less clear is the benefit of this technology, particularly in retail, so in crime prevention and also customising loyalty programs or interfaces when they're engaging at the checkout, for example. So there's probably a lot of these sorts of examples. Kmart comes to mind as well. But in terms of having a more formal commissioner outcome, this Bunnings case is a useful example. So the surveillance AI enables is ethically challenging, and its convenience, efficiency and cost effectiveness does not necessarily make its use justifiable. People who entered 63 Bunnings stores in Victoria and New South Wales between November 2018 and November 2021 had their faces captured via CCTV. In November last year, the Privacy Commissioner deemed that Bunnings' use of facial recognition was disproportionately intrusive relative to the risk level presented by customers. Additionally, Bunnings failed to take reasonable steps to implement practices, procedures and systems required to comply with the Privacy Act. Bunnings collected the sensitive information of individuals without their consent. Bunnings failed to take reasonable steps to notify individuals about the facts, circumstances and purposes of their personal information being collected. And Bunnings failed to include privacy policy information about the kinds of personal information it was collecting. So this outcome does not mean that the risk to reward ratio will always remain this way for Bunnings, but this outcome does reinforce that holistic systems thinking is required to assess and monitor the appropriateness of a technology, and we need to support leaders around ethical decision making and balancing a range of stakeholder needs. So we're getting to our third layer or bucket of trust, that broader ecosystem. And here we're really talking about regulations, frameworks and legislation. So we really need a robust ecosystem to put in some balances and checks for when organisations stumble, because they will stumble. And this prevents individuals bearing all the risks and consequences and promotes and upholds consumer rights. So regulations and frameworks are critical to setting performance and behavioural expectations and establishing and enforcing rules and guidelines. So we'll just briefly have a look at Australia's current AI regulatory framework. And I know we do have some legal experts in the room, so apologies if I've missed any applicable laws. But it goes to show there's quite a lot of layers and detail here that businesses need to be checking in that they're meeting these standards, or they will find themselves in a spot of bother. So really, to wrap up today's session, just a brief summary of where we've been and what we've covered. So there are 3 buckets of trust that support fit-for-purpose, beneficial adoption of technologies. So I'd really like to close in the same way that I opened today, with a question. How are you enabling technology adoption? Which aspects of the system can you influence? And what skills and knowledge do you need to grow to make sure you are not just deploying technology because you can? That's it.
Okay. Human factors, technology, time. Schedules, event briefs, running on time, all that sort of stuff. Online, offline, we're doing it, living it right here, right now, right? I'm going to allow my tech advisor to set us up, because I'd like to see if we can pull some of those questions that are coming through. I'm keeping a bit of an eye on the questions in the comments as they're coming through. Some really insightful stuff that's coming up. Is that going to give us an update on the Slido? Yeah, if we get an update on Slido, that would be really good. Human factors, they're everywhere, aren't they? I mean, we all walk around with these in our pockets now, and we're all really used to how fast does it... Here's a couple of questions that I often ask people, actually. How fast does it take someone to sit in a room by themselves on their own with nothing to do before at the bus stop, on a bus, in an airport, at dinner, waiting for a meeting, no matter where you are. How long does it take? I'd love to actually do that research and find out what it actually is, because I think it's under 10 seconds. I don't know about anybody else, but we reach for these things all the time. Then on the flip side, when we come to something that isn't intuitive, there was something I was using recently that wasn't intuitive in how it was being designed for me as a user, and it just gets really frustrating really quickly. So human factors with the technology, that was a really interesting stat or interesting comment, that it's actually the human factors and the usability rather than the technology itself that is driving us back. Grab the mic there for a minute, Richard, and give us, you've been watching this as we go, I know, watching these questions. What have you seen? What's really sort of standing out in terms of what people are talking about and asking?
Sure, there's a couple of themes I think that are coming through. One, I guess, if we start back to when we did Edward and I had our little session here at the beginning, a lot of questions around how come no one knows about South Australia's leadership in the space industry. I think that's an interesting question that we probably could think about. How do we get that better known? And also the question that's number 2 here on the list is a common theme as well, about how do we attract talent and retain talent, whether it's at the state level or within our own businesses. That sort of, there's some other questions further down that talk about attracting and retaining talent, especially as technology changes all the time. And then the other one here, and I love the latest question here, I hadn't seen it until I just brought it up there. We critically need critical thinking on a human level. I think, we talk a lot, as Sarah said, we talk a lot about technology for technology's sake. And I think one of the things I took from the last session, where that question came from, is soft skills still matter. In fact, maybe soft skills matter even more in the age of AI and advanced technologies than they did in the past, because of the ease of which it appears that you can answer questions with AI today means you can kind of fake it till you make it a little bit around giving an answer but not understanding why the answer was derived.
Do we start to call them human skills?
Perhaps we do. Yes.
Perhaps we do. So we posed, thank you, Richard. We posed a question at the beginning, just before we go to a break and morning tea. I'll just do a quick check. I don't think there's anything else that I needed to say. No, we didn't. Just a quick check for you all. We sort of started at the beginning of the day, and I'm not sure that we got there. Did we? Yeah. Did we get some?
We didn't, but we'll go back to it.
We'll go back to it. So we had a question there that said, how will critical technologies change and shape the future? So that's a very live question here we are. How will emerging technologies shape our future?
Yeah, so pick up your phone and go to the poll, and you can put a single word or a couple of word answers in there on what you think will shape the future around emerging technologies.
And I'm going to throw a couple of people straight into it, actually, because I have the power. I'm going to ask a couple of people around the room for a human voice around that as well. How will emerging technologies shape our future? Reflection, anyone?
That second one is good. Or the bottom one now.
Data integration. They go up so fast, don't they? Can I hand the mic to someone for a personal reflection on what you've heard so far? I'll go here first and then you can hand it across. Diana Newcombe from the Law Society of South Australia.
So it's no surprise the lawyers want to speak first, right, and not use technology to respond. But I think it depends, actually, in answer to your point about the addiction to phone use. Do we abandon ourselves is the question I'm asking. So the point about critical thinking really resonates for me. You'll have seen media articles about people relying on false cases, fake cases generated by AI in court. And I wonder to myself, why do people switch their brains off when they're using AI and stop thinking? And, do we have the discipline to bring ourselves back to actually deploying thought and human rigour, as well as compassion and wisdom, or do we just abandon ourselves to picking up the phone and asking ChatGPT?
Do we have a neuroscientist in the room? Tanya, will pass across to you.
I put up the words increasing inequality because I am really concerned that rooms like this are full of people who are likely to be able to afford to access these new emerging technologies, but there are many rooms of people who will not be able to afford to do that. And I think that as we see this going forward, we are going to see increasing polarisation, and we need to think really, really carefully about the impact of that on our societies.
That's a really salient point. We've probably got time for a couple more reflections if we have them in the room. Yes, I'll just wind my way through here. Oops, sorry. Is it wind or wend? Wend my way or wind my way?
You wind.
You wind.
One
Well, I wound anyway.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Angelina Russo from Benny.
Yep, so thank you. So two points to those reflections. One, that I saw recently that since 2020, the amount of content online that is AI generated is increasing exponentially, obviously, but is coming up to that 40%. 40, it's a lot. It's a lot. So do we still have the critical skills, and will we continue to have the critical skills to be able to tell the difference? And the other part picks up on that last comment about that digital divide. I think we learnt a lot. I hope we learnt a lot when we had the same discussion around the introduction of social media in the first instance, but also of digital content creation, from starting from about 20 years ago. That whole digital divide discussion and the theories behind what would happen into the future were quite well researched and documented. So I'm hoping that there's something in there that we can learn.
Thank you. Yes, Frank.
Just a few words. I think we should never forget that technology is a tool. Technology itself is valueless. It's about what you do with the technology. If you have a hammer, you can construct a house, or you can kill somebody with it. And at the same time, you can use the tool to become more lazy. There's AI, so I do see that around. People have a tendency to laziness, or you can use the tool to actually become more productive. In the end, I think it all comes down to who are we as a society? Are we a decent society, hardworking society with high values? Then we're going to use the tools in a positive way, which also solves, I believe, the problem with talent leaving. When I put out an advertisement for a job, I get a lot of people from the US and a lot of people from the UK applying nowadays because of problems in their own country for various reasons. In that sense, I think we solve a lot as a society if we can, keep our profile to the rest of the world as a country that's decent and hardworking and using technology for the benefit of the society than for anything else.
Thank you, Frank. Probably time for one more reflection. Anyone want to grab that? Yes, please. So Hans Confiance from the Department of Industry, Science and Resources.
It's a mouthful. I think one of the things that really got me thinking is that a lot of these things are not new. So all of the technologies like quantum is from the 1920s. A lot of the work that led to AI started in the 1960s with artificial neural GPS in the 70s and lasers. I mean, lasers was famously thought as a solution looking for a problem back in the 80s. So I had a good friend from Bletchley Park saying how in the 70s when he just started as a public servant, it was like, how is the world going to look like? How do you design policies that's only ever going to be implemented 40 years from now, right? So, and I think we're just in the same position again where we're just trying to imagine a future that we probably won't be able to even quantify. Who remembers not having a mobile phone growing up with one? And then suddenly Steve Jobs went on a stage and now we're all stuck with it. So, yeah, it's great we're having these conversations.
Thank you, Hans. Yes, who remembers travelling without mobile phones and GPS? And how did your mum survive knowing that you were across the other side of the world doing goodness knows what with no contact? I don't know, but she's alive. Thank you. That was a really valuable just little spot. And I'll make the comment that as much as we're encouraging you, and I do encourage you to continue to input into Slido, human factors came in, and just that little moment of being able to talk with people around the room and hand a microphone around and hear even just the texture of people's voices and how they're talking and what their insights really are is just always. It's always present for us as humans. Now, as humans, we probably also like morning tea. So let's all have a break.